think if he wants to extend his career another 5 years, he could do it legitimately as a safety. All right, it is the Breer Report for June the 5th. Quiet time in the NFL. Things will heat up a bunch with most of the league going into veteran minicamp next week. But for right now, a quieter period. So what I wanted to do was look at three names that have been talked about quite a bit on the trade market over the course of the last couple of months, and guys that I think could be in play to be moved. One that probably isn't in play to be moved. I'll explain all of it right here, right now. And we're going to start with Jalen Ramsey. His name has been out there as perhaps the biggest name on the trade market over the last couple of months. The Dolphins seem ready to move on from him. They did pay a $4 million roster bonus back in March. That leaves about $21 million left on his ledger. And that's important because I don't know that anybody's going to be willing to enter into the agreement to pay him that much right now. He is due $21 million next year as well. That's a factor in the way all this plays out. And so the question becomes, because his money is guaranteed for this year, how much are the Dolphins willing to take on to facilitate a trade? So I think the thing you have to look at first is who Jalen Ramsey is as a player. And at this point, I think he still has another good year or two left at corner if you want to play him there. But I look at him as a Charles Woodson, a Rod Woodson, a guy who's going to be able to transition if he wants to safety and be really, really effective at that position over a longer period of time. I think if he wants to extend his career another 5 years, he could do it legitimately as a safety because, in particular in Los Angeles, he was doing a lot of safety type things and was really good in those areas. And moving to safety would highlight the areas in which he's still elite. So then the question becomes, what's the value? And what would he be worth as a safety if you do view him as a safety going forward? And I think I look at this as a fair compromise between another team and the Dolphins. The Dolphins buy a draft pick here. So the Dolphins take on, say, $10 million of his salary for this year. And in doing so, maybe they wind up getting a third-round pick. Another team gets the player. They took on, say, the $11 million left this year, the $21 million next year. Maybe you want to rework that with Jalen Ramsey so that 32/2 is structured a little bit differently. Gives you a versatile piece for your secondary. So I think that that's probably right around the sweet spot to get something done. But it does feel like at this point, like Jalen Ramsey has moved on from the Dolphins and vice versa. And this is a real sort of reset spot for the Dolphins as well. Connor and I talked about this on the podcast this week where, we've seen them offload some veterans. Obviously, Teron Armstead retired, and this feels like a natural spot for them to reset their roster, to try to get a little bit younger. They've obviously still got some older pieces out there. But I could see this being the precursor for a couple other trades potentially down the line as well. And that brings us to the second topic, and that's the availability of Jonnu Smith. I do think Jonnu Smith would like to stay in Miami. He has a home there. He looks very comfortable in Mike McDaniel's offense. Mike McDaniel was able to get a lot out of him last year. He's a very specific type of player. So I don't know that his value would be great across the league. I think you have to have a plan for someone like Jonnu Smith. And that's why the Pittsburgh situation makes so much sense. Donald Parham, who they brought in, is dealing with an injury right now. So there is a need there at that position. And here's the other thing. If Aaron Rodgers does show up next week, if he shows up at the beginning of training camp, this move would give the Steelers and Arthur Smith, their offensive coordinator, a lot of flexibility to do a lot of different things offensively. They've already got a very functional, high-end, wide tight end in Pat Freiermuth, who they locked up long-term. And so Jonnu Smith would not have to play in line. You could move him around a bunch. You could toggle between 12 personnel and 11 personnel based on what you have at the receiver position with George Pickens now gone. DK Metcalf, very clearly, your number one. They like Calvin Austin a lot. And whether they play more three receiver sets maybe depends on how Roman Wilson comes along. There's just this ability to do a lot of different things if you do acquire Jonnu Smith. So the way I look at this is it will give them the opportunity to do a little bit more formationally, do a little bit more with that tight end position. Arthur Smith knows how to use him, so it would make all the sense in the world. Again, I don't think the Dolphins are actively looking to move Jonnu Smith off their roster, but it would make some sense based on where they are as a team, based on the spot that they found themselves in, where they're going to need to get younger over the next couple of years. If you can go and get a decent draft pick for them, it makes sense for Miami. Again, like, I don't think they're ever going to use the word rebuild, but a little bit of a reset year there. And then Pittsburgh brings in another option offensively for Aaron Rodgers and gives Arthur Smith a little bit more flexibility in how he builds his group for 2025. Finally, our third trade topic this week is Kyle Pitts. And I'm going to tell you why I don't think Kyle Pitts winds up getting moved. Now, he's set to play this year on a fully guaranteed $11 million option. It's $10.88 million to be exact. It's a lot of money. Again, it's locked in. It's a lump sum. Other teams' cash budgets, their cap budgets are mostly spent at this point in the calendar. And so, the question becomes, who would bring him in and why would you bring him in? And you look at the last couple of years, right around 600 yards. The effects of the injury that he suffered in 2022 have lingered. 2023, he's really playing through a lot, had to have his knee drained pretty consistently. Last year, with a new offensive coordinator and Zach Robinson coming in under Raheem Morris, he had to earn his spot back and split time with Charlie Warner. So, you look at where the Falcons are, and it's, this is one last swing on getting a guy we took with the 4th overall pick back. If you're another team, though, looking at this, and you say to yourself, well, he was a sort of a platoon player in 2024. He's got the injury history. It's an $11 million lump sum. Is it really worth it to take on that number and give up a draft pick on day 2? Probably not, right? You only have him for the 1 year. Again, you have the lump sum. I don't think it's going to make sense for anybody. And for that reason, I don't think the value is going to match up here. If the Falcons were willing to move him for a 5th round pick, a 6th round pick, maybe then. But based on how much they've invested in him, I don't know that makes sense for them to move off of him for that sort of return. Although, of course, they do have the draft pick deficit next year after the James Pierce trade. So maybe they would put some value in picking up a late pick. But if they demand an earlier pick, I just don't see where another team's going to go there. So I just don't see the value matching up. Appreciate all you guys coming out. As always, you can get me your feedback, get me your questions for the mailbag at Albert Breer on Twitter, at Albert_Breer on Instagram, at Albert R. Breer on Facebook. We should have more news next week. Again, most of the NFL is into their mandatory mini camps. There are some contract situations lingering out there. Micah Parsons in Dallas, Terry McLaurin in Washington. We'll see what those look like when we get to Monday and Tuesday of next week. Again, get me all your feedback. We love hearing from you. Anything you got for us, you can put it right below us on the comments on YouTube or get to me on social media. We will see you next week.